Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Jacqueline Hurley, and I'm so grateful that you're here with us today, especially if you're in the DSO space, which I'm sure you are because this is geared to DSO and managing multiple locations. Let's be honest, accounts receivable is one of the most complex and critical areas in dental business operations. And when you add the layer of multiple locations, the challenges become even more intense. So today, we have two industry leaders with powerful perspectives. We have Rob Linder from eAssist Dental Solutions, a company that lives and breathes revenue cycle management. They support dental practices across the country in optimizing collections and cleaning up accounts receivable. We also have Ajay Chadha, the Chief Financial Officer of 42 North Dental. He's one of the most and 42 North Dental is one of the most prominent and respected DSOs in the country. So we're excited to have both of them here today. I don't know about you, but I'm all about stories, and they're going to talk a little bit about how their organization transformed the management of their accounts receivable and created a system, especially when outsourcing became a part of their equation. So I want to let you know two things for housekeeping: that there is no continuing education offered for today's webinar. If you have any questions, you can add them into the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try and get to those questions before the end of our presentation. So grab your notebooks, settle in. Let's dive into the systems and strategies that are helping DSOs not just survive, but to thrive. Rob and Ajay, welcome. We're so glad to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. It's exciting to be here. Exciting to have my friend Jay on the call to talk about his experience. Let me just brag about Jay really quick. Jay is a veteran CFO. He has been in the industry for a long time. He has every possible credential you can imagine, CPA, all of those types of things. He was a partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers and found his way into the dental space. Really experienced guy with his cool GQ picture here. So Jay's humble. It's probably bothering him that I'm talking so much about him. So we'll just move on from that. I'm Rob Linder, the Chief Strategy Officer at eAssist. I've been in the DSO space for about 20 years. Prior to that, came from the accounting world as Jay did also. I came from Anderson, not PwC. We were competitors, but we're friends today, and it's fun to talk, especially about projects like this, because we have a lot of experience. We did this as accountants in the beginning of our career, and now we get to do it in the executive role here in the DSO space. So let's start with what AR recovery projects are. We get a lot of phone calls asking us to help people recover their accounts receivable. We see this a lot with group practices, and particularly those who have had a lot of M&A activity. So if you've bought practices that are on different PMS systems, you're trying to assimilate them into your culture and your processes and your systems, you probably have an AR balance that's growing. And just a few key metrics. Typically, we like to see AR balances that are about equal to 1 month of an annual net production. So if you're whatever you produce in a month, that's your net production. That ought to be what your AR balance is for that facility. So that's just a good rule of thumb to keep in the back of your mind. We also like to see collection ratios around 98%. And we see them in the industry range between 93 and 98. 98 is fantastic. Some people even do better than that because a lot of prepayments and so forth. And we'd like to see the CFOs and the chief revenue officers or vice presidents of revenue cycle management taking an active role in managing their accounts receivable and utilizing fantastic RCM processes. And we're going to talk about that today in particular. An accounts receivable project is one where you have AR balances that are greater than 90, let's say, and you need help to go get it. And your current RCM department, your resources are allocated either in the practice or in a corporate centralized setting. They're allocated towards just making the donuts. They're collecting the AR that you're producing every day, but you have this building balance that's growing and growing. And sometimes we've seen it for, they're years old, but it's big. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How do you go get that? And what are some best practices? So let's go ahead and just start with Jay. Talk to us about what you encountered in your experiences as a CFO of 42 North with your RCM department, how you and I met and came in contact, and talk to us about this project.
Well, thanks, Robin. It's great to be joining you for this webinar. Thank you for having me. Maybe I'll sort of start with a bit of a background around 42 North and sort of the evolution of our revenue cycle processes. So for those that don't know 42 North, we are a DSO based in Massachusetts. We're in 9 different states. We have 100 plus practices in those 9 different states, multidisciplinary practices. And our aim, like most DSOs, is to grow. And most of that growth it's a combination of organic growth and inorganic growth. And certainly that's the same for 42 North. But in order to do that growth successfully, very, very important to have standardized, scalable platform. And we realized this a few years back that our revenue cycle needed a greater degree of standardization. And effectively, how do we achieve it? Sorry, how were we going to achieve it? We felt that we want to streamline and centralize certain RCM functions, particularly as it related to insurance claims and insurance receivables and posting of those things as well. So we went down a path in, I guess it would be in late 22 or during 22 of centralizing our processes. What we realized is that to do that effectively, first of all, you need some experienced help. But secondly, in order to do it cost efficiently as well, then perhaps some outsourcing makes sense as well. So we effectively built some team internally, and then we supplemented with an outsourced help as well. As we were doing that in 2023, we were still early on in this evolution of a centralized RCM process. We had to go through a system conversion. Now, this is not something that we wanted to do, but our incumbent practice management system provider advised us that they will no longer be supporting that platform, and we need to make a change. So that effectively forced us to make a decision. Either we migrate to their new platform, or we effectively get a totally different one. We went through a search process. We ultimately decided that we were going to migrate to a totally different platform. Now, I've got new processes. I've got a new system. Okay. One of the things that happened in that process was that we need to transfer balances from the old system into the new. And what we realized while we were in the middle of it, that we could not do a bulk transfer. So everything had to be done individually. Okay. Now, given the size of our business, we're talking about tens of thousands of balances that had to be transferred. And what we did is that while we were doing that, we realized that this is not something that we can undertake ourselves. And this is where Rob and eAssist came in. Effectively, we were introduced. In fact, our CEO met Rob at a conference, and we knew of this challenge that we had. The conversation started. Our CEO connected Jeff. His name is Jeff Ligabel. So Jeff connected Rob with myself. Rob and I had some dialogue and see how eAssist could help us. In that first engagement, eAssist supplemented our internal team in making sure that we had, and I'll be very candid here, we had $18 million of AR that had to be transferred by balance, by patient balance. Okay, so this is tens of thousands of amounts and balances that need to be transferred. So our team was supplemented by the eAssist team. Rob was able to deploy a team very, very quickly, and we were able to achieve the goal of having to do this within a certain time period. And I'll say that that time period was weeks. It didn't have the benefit of months. So we did that successfully. And I think that was the first experience that 42 North had with eAssist. But subsequently, a couple of months later, now I'm going to build on this story. Okay. Subsequently, what happened is that we realized that $18 million, a good chunk of that was getting rather old. And again, we did not have the internal resources. I spoke with Rob, and effectively we determined a plan and an approach to see how eAssist could support our efforts on that. So effectively, our insurance AR that was there, his team helped us follow up on old claims, making sure that the appropriate documentation was there, the follow-up was there, or anything that was missing was followed up on, such that we could get the appropriate processing happening with the payers. Ultimately, that did result in a very significant recovery of that AR in the 7 figures. And certainly that was very appreciated as well. So there was a two-phase project. It started with some helping with some, more tedious task of balance transfer, but it evolved into what I view anyways as a much higher value add support in helping us recover AR. And as we all know, cash is what matters. We've done the service. Now we want to make sure that we are collecting on that service. So that's sort of the story of 42 North, or RCM, standardization evolution that we went through. Some of it was, our planned, and some of it was necessitated. One of the other pieces I'll throw in there that sort of several of you would have been impacted. 26 months back, spring of 2024, there was a cyber attack that happened at Change Healthcare. That impacted claims processing as well. So combination of, in our case, systems changes, as well as this impact from the cyber incident that we were not immune to as well, meant that we needed some changed strategy, some changed help. And that's where eAssist certainly played a key role in the summer of 2024 for us. So Rob, that's a bit of a story, but
hey, that's fantastic. I just want to dig deeper into a couple of the things that you said. One thing that stands out is there were some environmental factors that impacted an effective, finance team and RCM team. Things that were externalities that you really can't control. A cyber attack that someone else had affected you. M&A, that's planned, but there, you buy a practice, it fits your culture, and you bring it in. It's on a different PMS system that impacts you. A PMS system deciding to not continue, that affects you. And so what we saw at 42 North was a group of really smart people trying to figure out, how do we take these things that are affecting us and still have an effective organization to collect the funds for our doctors so we can, grow our company. You said we a lot, and I know you're a humble guy and you give credit to others, but talk a little bit about stakeholders that were involved in decision making, because it wasn't just you, but you as one of your leadership skills is to involve other people in this process. So talk about how you managed up, you managed down, you managed laterally to involve multiple stakeholders in this recovery process.
Well, Rob, I'm a big believer in having the right team, and the right team with the right capabilities. So this is an area of focus for us at 42 North. I spend a lot of time in making sure that we have the right team members with the right capabilities and right amount of resources as well. So it's a combination of capability and availability. And, since I've joined 42 North a few years back, we've evolved along that continuum significantly during that time period. And I'm very, very happy to say that we've, what I think of as, notably upgraded the capabilities of our team during this time period. But in addition, notably upgraded and standardized the quality of our processes. And I'm going to share a stat with you. You mentioned earlier at the outset that, organizations range from, let's just call it somewhere between 92 to, 96 or 97% of production are they collecting. So our stat right now is that we're collecting 99% of my net production. Okay. A few years back, this is not too long ago, 3 years back, actually. Okay. We were at 96%. So the standardization that we did of our processes, building a centralized team, as well as making sure that we had the right people in the right roles with the right processes. And some of that is internal and some of that is external as well. So it's not all being done by internal team members, but having the right skills to drive the process and to make sure that you have the appropriate KPIs to measure performance against those KPIs. This is one thing that we are actually big proponents of, is having measures that give us timely visibility as to how the business is doing, how are our processes doing, what processes are working, what processes are not working. And as we do that, it gives us the ability to make decisions. Informed decisions that are data-based is very, very critical. And I'm having a finance background, obviously, I'm all about the data. And if the data is objectively, based and calculated, then it should be able to help us make some informed decisions. And I've been fortunate to have a team that gets us that data, a team that has actually helped us implement on the actions that we needed and to have the success. And it's certainly I'm pleased with the direction that our RCM processes and the team that we built have taken us.
One of the things I just want to highlight and just give you kudos for, Ajay, is you had CEO stakeholder support, you had operations stakeholder support, you had board level stakeholder support, you had your Henry Schein on the vendor side support, you had eAssist on your support, you had your team supporting. I remember we flew out there and we met in your conference room, and we just talked. How can we help, and what are the benefits? And I want to share screen now and just talk a little bit about what do you gain from doing a good AR recovery project. And I know that you mentioned cash flow, and in your situation, you're a big organization, and so your recovery was 7 figures, which is fantastic, and the fees aren't even close to that. So it's a big ROI on that. But I remember you looked at me and you said, Rob, when we're done with this project, I want to know why. I want to know what are the conditions that existed that resulted in having these claims not paid. And that was really important to you. And so when we sat down with Michi and her team, you had said, here are the root cause trends that I want the team to track. And eAssist has a way that we can customize that, and we can, if there's a certain language that you want to use in terms of how you communicate with issues in your organization, we can customize that. And we did that, and we were able to track things. So I have this bullet list here on the screen. So cash flow is king, right? We should all wear the hat that says got cash flow. Adjudication of an open claim. Some of those who are on this call might be from a smaller organization. They're just experiencing getting audited. As a CPA, we just covered this for just a second. Why is it important to adjudicate an open claim when you have an audit? And why does that matter?
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's effectively the converting our work that we have done or our providers have done, okay, into getting paid for the work is the goal, and getting paid for what they're entitled to be paid in an accurate manner, whatever has been agreed with the payers and so on. And one process, you talked about root cause of unpaid claims and denials. This is something that I will reiterate that this was an area that needed significant improvement for us. And in hindsight, certainly the recommendations that your team made for us, not only during that project, but we've actually taken a lot of those to heart and implemented on it. And when I shared the stat, our current stat of the 99%, it's incorporating some of the feedback, or hopefully all of the feedback, but let's just call it a good chunk of the feedback that your colleagues provided to us last summer when you were involved with this. So we've benefited from, having timely follow-up, making sure that the practices are doing what, having clear guidelines as to what they're responsible for, and then handing the baton over to the centralized team, and effectively that team following up to the extent that they need to with payers and so on, to make sure that the claim processing is happening, and having regular dialogue with our payers as well. So that's very, very important. We have relationships with our key payers, and to the extent that something needs resolution, we do try and make sure that we are following up on that.
I love that. The next couple of pages, we've got some examples of some I'll just say de-identified, modified work product in terms of how we would report results, and so you'll get to see that here in a second. Um, and the dorky auditor in me, we don't want to have we want our financial statements to be clean, and we don't want our auditors coming in and seeing this big AR balance that's really not there. And and sometimes when we sit down with CFOs, they think 90% of their AR is collectible, they're hyper aged AR, and sometimes they think 20%. And seems like it kind of happens to fall out in the middle. So the third, which we'll show here in a second, root causes of some of the unpaid claims, denials, where to focus your resources, which you're just a best practice in what you did, and then we'll end with what to outsource and to whom and when, and how to go about doing that. So this is an example of a couple of different types of ways that we can share information. So the pie chart you see on the left, we put in some. This is mock data, but it's similar to a project that we did this in the last couple of years, where we identify the root causes of the claims, and that helps you identify where to focus. So if you're looking at this as an example, what do you learn from that? So just take a second and look at that pie chart. If you're the CFO, or if you're a VP of RCM or a chief revenue officer, and this is the result that you're getting, and mind you, we would update this every week, and you'd see this result, where would you focus? Well, your mind's going to say IV, and that's right. Insurance verification. So in this specific situation, 32.3% of the hyper-aged AR is related to a breakdown in the IV process. And when we do our tracking for you, as we go and we touch all the claims, we age the claims, we're resubmitting them, we're aging them, and then we're posting them, we are tracking what is the reason that caused it to become so. And those reasons are ones that you can help us customize, because we'll make it fit your culture and your language, how you speak internally. And this is valuable. So an example off to the right are claim rejection trends. So these are examples from a very specific customer and how they wanted us to track the issues as we ran across them. And it's easy to take these issues and drop them into the categories that ultimately show the root causes. So this is kind of fun. So hopefully your mind is racing, thinking, oh my goodness, like this is really helpful data. And imagine with all of the data points, and in some cases, we just recently finished a project where we touched 76,000 claims, is we have the details for every single one. So the data junkies on the call, imagine what you can learn from that. And so it's fantastic information, very helpful. And as Ajay has shared, he took information that was unique for his individual situation and applied it in his organization, and was able to see an increase of his collection ratio from 96% to 99%, which is fantastic. And if you're doing, hundreds of millions of dollars, that's a lot. You can do a lot of stuff with a couple extra $1 million in your pocket. This is a fun one. This is a de-identified also example. Someone asked us to show in a summary just give me the facts, nothing but the facts. What's the payments? What are the denials? What's in process? And what do you need to touch? So here's an example of something, a way that we would report information. And again, the results of your AR recovery project are tied to how clean your AR is. It's how good your information is. So garbage in, garbage out. And so that's why it's important to start those AR recovery projects now, so you can get on top of the type of information that's going into the system, and then how you can utilize that information to inform the processes. Jay, will you talk to us about how do you go about sharing information like this? You're the finance organization seat, and you run that for 42 North. How do you work with the operations team? Let's say, for example, this isn't this model I don't have as a good one, but what if the field teams are leaving out information, and they're not taking X-rays, they're not getting some of the information that would into the PMS system that is essential for a claim to be paid? How do you communicate and organize internally to resolve that?
So what we have, Rob, is what we call a practice dashboard. We actually have several dashboards, but there's a weekly practice dashboard that our practices get. And effectively, it has different dimensions on it. It talks about sort of the patient scheduling. What are the key metrics along that? Some metrics around doing the dentistry, like the exam percentage that you talked about, or you made reference to, and then collecting for what you do. So how effective are our processes for collecting, whether it's from the patient at the point of service or subsequently from the insurance companies as well. And then there's some data that we're also sharing. What's the open claim volume? Okay. And effectively, how many of those open claims needs action by practice versus there's a credentialing issue or there's some other item. So this data is being compiled and distributed on a weekly basis. That enables us to focus where the effort needs to be. At the end of the day, it's in our collective interest to make sure that we're collecting, well, first that we are doing the dentistry, okay, that we are filling our patient schedule, our provider schedules. So keep them busy because that helps with engagement retention as well. But it's not only to keep them busy with production. I got to be able to collect for that production because that's how, our providers, most of them get paid. And that's how the company is able to fulfill its obligations as well. So maximizing on collections or minimizing the bad debt is absolutely critical for us. So having those key metrics that enable us to focus, I call them the KPIs or the KPI dashboard. But we have effectively a dozen metrics that we measure as an organization, and they're put into those three buckets: doing the dentistry, the patient scheduling, doing the dentistry, and collecting for the work.
So Ajay, I know that you've got a hard stop here in a minute for another meeting. I'm just so thankful that we have your time today, and for those who are dialing in and listening to this conversation, you may or may not have a veteran CFO like Ajay. You may not have a CEO like Jeff Ligabelt, but maybe you do. And if you're asking yourself, how do I start? What do I do as a result of listening to a call like this? Ajay, what advice would you give? You've got some CFOs on the phone. You've got some RCM leaders, procurement and so forth. What advice would you give to how do they take what we talked about today and get action around that?
I think the key drivers of success, particularly long-term success, which obviously is based on growth in our business, has to having a set of processes or effectively an organization that is scalable. And how do you get scalable? You need standardization. So that is absolutely critical. I discussed that earlier, and we've spent a lot of energy resources in getting to that standardization. Are we fully there yet? No, but we have made significant stride such that, I think that we have the platform to be able to grow that. The second bit there is, okay, so I've centralized, I've standardized, but are those processes actually being followed? So having the SOPs and the training for the practices as well as your home office, okay? Because I've got over 100 practices, over 1,600 people, am I able to get those people, those staff members at the front desk to be able to do the things that we want them to be able to do, such that along those three categories of KPI. And then finally is my home office team that is supporting my practices. Is it fulfilling its role in a timely, efficient, proficient manner as well? All of that needs the right people in the right place with the right training and tools to make that happen. And sometimes you realize that you need some third-party help. And that third-party help could be an outsourced provider, such as eAssist. We leverage eAssist on certain projects, but we also leverage third parties for part of our RCM functions, right? So it's doing these various sets of things, but it's not just one silver bullet. Ultimately, it takes time. It has taken us several years, but I'm pleased with where we are and where we're headed.
I love that. Everybody, I'm going to share screen again, and Ajay, if you've got to go, we're so thankful for your time and experience. And everybody, we're going to do a couple more of these. We're going to talk a lot about this type of work. We're the next one of the next calls. We're going to talk about how do you decide what module or what part of your RCM function to outsource and when and how to go about picking someone to do it. Let me just share a screen and Ajay, thank you.
So
Thank you
Rob,
so
thank you
much.
very much for having me join. I appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully, the attendees found this to be helpful, and I wish everyone the best. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ajay. So how to get started and what's next. So I put up here, talk with your team Shine vendor. One of the things that was really powerful about our experience with 42 North is we were deeply involved with our Henry Schein counterpart, and that they have regular communication with the CEO, the CFO, all the different parties, and so they brought us together. We also brought in um, the PMS vendor. In this situation, it was Henry Schein One with the Send, and so we were able to coordinate that service with everybody. And at eAssist, we're agnostic on the PMS system, so we can have those conversations with any of the PMS vendors. We're very happy to do that. We work with 61 different PMS systems. And so whatever system that you're working on, we can work with you for balance transfers. We can work with you for the AR recovery. We have the experience. Also, Jay mentioned that we put a team together really rapidly and we were able to deploy resources. So at one point, the team that was working on his account, we had 30 people. So if you can imagine how hard it would be to amass 30 RCM experts that could go and help you do something that's really complex. Claims are denied for a reason. And so the people that you put on the denials have to be smart. They have to know what they're doing. And it's one of the value propositions that eAssist brings to the table is we have 1,700 experienced billers. So that was really helpful. The second bullet, scope the work and get and estimate what the benefit is for you. You could probably do that really quickly. Just pull an AR aging report, look at your AR that's over 90 and ask yourself, can my internal team do this? If they work on this, will they be able to keep up with the regular business? Most of the time, the answer is no, they're not. So how would you carve out that work? How would you interact with us? And then just talk with us. We'll give you a proposal. It's free. We'll have conversation. I'm going to put up a QR code with my Calendly and my email on here in a second. And then as you go through this process, don't do it alone. Do what Ajay did. Get involvement from your board. Get involvement from your CEO. If you're the CEO, get involvement from your CFO because they're responsible for this. Your CRO, your RCMVP, and your board cares, and your doctors care because sometimes the doctors are their compensation ties to this AR getting collected. Some groups don't do it that way. They have different compensation programs. But a lot of the times when this AR comes in, doctors are getting paid. So doctors love this work, especially your chief dental officer. They're very concerned about why claims aren't getting paid. And if there's little things that can be done and a small investment to have this recovery work done, it's going to matter a lot to them. And then, hey, just do it. It's your money. It's not hard to do. So here's my email, and I'll leave this screen up here for a minute, and then we'll invite Jacqueline to come back on, and we'll just talk with her for just a second. But this is the Calendly. If you want to screen this or screenshot this QR code, you can get onto my calendar. And if you have a problem finding a time that works for you, happy to change my calendar around and adjust. And so there's my email. You can just reach out to me directly. I love it. Jacqueline, your experience, you've been in the dental industry for 30 years. What would you say about what we just learned from Ajay?
I absolutely love what Ajay has taught us today. He's taken us through such a clear and practical look at how just the importance of having that AR strategy, especially through outsourcing, can drive, those lasting changes that are needed for DSOs. I just was thinking when it comes to your accounts receivable, if there's one key takeaway, when your accounts receivable is under control, your entire organization runs stronger. And I'm really excited that you were able to get in contact with Ajay, that you were able to create a team to help his team really just kind of make their organization stronger. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for sharing all this information today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for your participation. Look for an email from us or from your Henry Schein strategic account manager or whoever the people that you work with the Team Schein. We're going to be talking a lot about outsourcing. One of the core things that we do at eAssist is we do the outsourced dental insurance billing. That's our bread and butter. That's where we have the biggest impact. We save DSOs and our solo practices thousands and thousands of dollars every year. We have expert resources that are able to deliver this service for you. We do insurance verification. We do these balance transfers. We do the air recovery. We have patient billing services. There's a lot that we do that can support your function. And we are getting more calls, I would say, in the last 12 months from mega DSOs asking for help than we are getting from any other segment. And I think a lot of it has to do with the access to skilled resources. We're seeing a lot of pressure in the market, a lot of focus on EBITDA, and you might be one of those. Your private equity sponsor, if you're a DSO, might be asking you, what are you doing to get EBITDA up? And it's very difficult in an inflationary environment. We've got high debt costs. We're seeing a little slowdown in M&A activity, and that ultimately puts pressure on that bottom line. And so when boards of directors are looking to see that same store growth, a lot of people start to push things around and try to squeeze and figure out where they can do it. And one of the things that we've learned through the process of helping our customers, we service thousands and thousands of customers here in the US, is the best way to get revenue up is treatment presentation and case acceptance and the patient experience. It's not actually RCM necessarily, but if you allocate your resources to the patient-facing experiences and outsource the billing processes to us, we'll do it, and you'll see a bigger impact in your P&L. You'll see revenue go up, and that's the I guess the message that we really want everyone to take away is we can help you increase your bottom line. We can help you focus on the things that matter most. You're in the practice of dentistry to take care of patients and to have healthy outcomes for your patients. And not a lot of people get excited about some of the stuff that we do. My children think my job is super boring, but we make a big difference and we can make an impact for you. So thank you for joining today. We're going to go ahead and end this call and tune in next time when we talk about ways or different things that you can outsource and when. And we'll have some pretty powerful experts in the dental industry, CFOs and heads of RCM departments that will join us. So stay tuned and have an incredible day.
Thank you.